Okay, let's get started, everybody. And welcome to this webinar, 5 ways to accelerate your sales team efficiency. And we're bringing together Microsoft Teams and Dynamics. So without further ado, let's do some introductions. Haseet.
Thanks, Rupert. Hello, everybody. My name is Haseet Sangrajka. I'm the CEO of City Dynamics. We're a Microsoft Dynamics partner focusing in on CRM and ERP. With me today on this webinar is Rupert and Ben from Information EXP. And in the background, we have Will handling all of our questions and answers and any help that you may need.
Hello. Well, thanks for the introduction, Haseet. Yeah. So appreciate some of you have come from connections through Haseet. Some of you are from connections from Information EXP. What we focus on is SharePoint and Teams and helping people manage your information within those platforms. So we're seeing a lot of people moving maybe from file systems into SharePoint or Teams and think, well, how do I go about that? And how do I integrate with my other systems, such as Dynamics? And the person who can answer all those questions is my colleague, Ben Leach. Ben, good morning.
Thanks, Rupert. Hi everyone, I'm Ben. Yeah, my role at Information EXP is to help organizations get the most out of SharePoint, Microsoft Teams, really the collaboration and document management elements of the Microsoft 365 suite and help them to get as productive as they can be with those tools.
Perfect. So just, I guess, a few background points. We're happy to share these slides. We'll send those by email afterwards. The slides are actually fairly lightweight because we're trying to go deep into the demos. This session is being recorded and you should be able to get access to that should you need it afterwards. Within 24 hours after the session, we'll send out a little survey. It's really simple. It's got about 5 questions. Most of them are 1 to 5 scale. We just really would like to know how we got on today, what you took out of it. And naturally, yeah, throw your questions at any time. Will is standing by and he'll drop those in at the appropriate moment, whether it's the topic we're talking about now and maybe if it's something more general, then he'll bring it up at the end, but we're very happy to update your questions as we go. So let's dive in, and for the purpose of today, we're looking at a typical client lifecycle, and we're starting with a scenario that we have a lead, and that lead could be a collection of leads, maybe from a webinar such as this. And we're taking how we take that lead and nurture it through to an opportunity. And one of the things that we want to do with an opportunity is, well, if we're having a sensitive conversation with a client, either they or ourselves probably want an NDA in place. So we're going to be looking about how we put that NDA in place. Following on that, we'll be looking at how we build a proposal. And from this perspective, our proposal is going to be an element of maybe, it's a bit of standardized stuff of what we do and how we do it, balanced with maybe some customization for this particular client. Obviously, signing this proposal is an important part of the process because that's what makes a deal happen. And then the final piece is, well, once we've got these signed documents, how do we store them? How do we protect them? How do we make sure we go back in a year's time that we've got our single version of the truth? And it's easy to say, yeah, that was the contract which was signed. That's the Word document maybe which is attached to it if I want to, reference it. And how are we going to do that? So I'm going to introduce to you Megan. Megan is a persona. She will be joined by a couple of other personas as well, Nesta and Diego. And throughout this, I will be playing the role as Megan and chief pointer and clicker. And Haseet will guide me through Dynamics, and Ben will guide me through Teams and through SharePoint. So without further ado, let's go straight into the tech and let's see how this whole thing starts to come together. So, Ben.
Good stuff. Thanks, Rupert. So I think what we just want to position here actually as we start is that much like Outlook is the tool that everyone will typically fire up every day, Teams is that, or Microsoft Teams is the sort of modern workplace tool that everyone is going to be accessing. So we've got Teams open, and one of the things that we can see at the top on the sidebar is that we've opened up our company portal that we've named Our World. And just a very brief overview of this. This is the kind of thing that you would think of as your sort of company intranet, where you've got things like your news stories, news articles about deals and wins, links to the tools tools that you most frequently use, upcoming events, you know, whether it might be a sort of upcoming webinar or sort of live meeting that you're running. And then as we go down towards the bottom, we've got, you know, the work that you're actually working on. So documents that you're actually collaborating on and working on. And in this case, we've actually got that sort of Twitter feed as well coming through. So not much more to sort of highlight around that, but other than pointing out that Teams really is that sort of central focal point where you start your work every day. Now, what we're going to do now, though, is actually just click on one of those links and fire up the Dynamic Sales Hub to sort of kick into the sales process. So I'm going to hand over to Haseet now to sort of take us from here.
Ben, thank you very much. That's great. So as we log into Dynamics, I get to my sales activity homepage and my dashboard. In my dashboard, I can see everything that I would want to see. I can see all my open opportunities. On the right-hand side, I can see that I have a couple of notifications around 2 opportunities that are going to close. The leads area is empty, but we'll come back to that in a minute. And if we scroll down a little, what we'll see here are all my activities that I need to do. So this is a great place for me to start. I can see everything that I have scheduled for me, whether that's something I've scheduled myself, or indeed something that's been scheduled for me by my colleagues or by the workflow engine. So with that, let's go into the leads area. So Rupert, if you could click on leads on the left, thank you.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Right, so we don't have any leads in here at the moment, but why don't we suck some in with the webinar that we had so we can import these in?
Yeah, so I might use maybe an alternative webinar tool. I might not be using Teams. And with most tools, you can get a CSV extract. And I imagine maybe if you're doing a number of webinars, then your extract will follow a similar format. So we can set the format to be a very standard CSV, comma delimiter. And because we know the format of this file, we don't need to manually map each of a city, company name, country. We've done that before. So let's choose webinar import. And as you can see, we've mapped all those. So if this is a repeating process, maybe doing every week, every month, then this is going to be super quick. But Haseet, it's probably worth at this point just explaining how Dynamics hangs together.
Okay, so we've got two sections here to really talk about. Let's talk about the Dynamics piece first. So the leads area really keeps all of your contacts that are not yet ready to buy in its own special area. So these could be leads that you get from a webinar, leads that you buy via list, people who give you business cards, you've gone to a show and you've picked up a number of contacts and points from there from a goldfish bowl, etc. All of these remain separate away from our real accounts and contacts, our real customers and our real prospects. With the leads area, we can continue to market to them, call them, email them until they raise their hand and then are ready to be converted. And at that point, we convert them over to an account, the organizational record, one or many contacts for all the people that we know, and indeed one or many opportunities that we can then track all the information against. Now that's great, and everything that we do with that client or that prospect is stored in Dynamics, but where we don't then have any capture of information is where we are doing internal collaboration around delivering our service or that sale, and that's where the Teams and the SharePoint piece comes in. And joining these 3 up together allows us to capture all those water cooler moments, all those meetings and conversations or chats that we have in Teams. All of our files are then also shared via SharePoint and Teams and Dynamics so that we are working in one consistent source. So I think let's go back to our leads area, Rupert, and see how we're doing.
Yeah, I think that's great. And historically, Dynamics and the rest of the Microsoft Cloud has always been this bit of a chasm between the two. And really what we're trying to show today is we're joining that chasm. How do we bridge it? How do we start maybe bringing those users who don't have Dynamics licenses? Because, you know, some of the higher end licenses, it is a big investment. But maybe I want to bring in a subject matter expert to help build an opportunity. Can I do that without actually giving them a Dynamics license? Or maybe they're external, then, you know, we're going to show some of that now. So let's see if my data has arrived. Joy.
Excellent.
So I see I've got my leads here. Which one do you want to dive into?
Let's start with Dominic Wright, our first one. So the first thing I have is everything about Dominic is available for me right here as we go through. So you can see straight away I've got his name and his details. I've got his phone number and mobile number stored, and a little further down, Rupert, please, you'll see that we have all of his information about his company, his website address, etc. is all captured within here. In the middle section, I'll start to capture all my timeline activity. So the first thing I want to do is I want to send out to Dominic an email around a thank you for attending our webinar. So could you just click on the little plus next to the timeline, please?
Oh, what I'm going to do first is just change his email address here, because mrexample.com will probably get bombarded by email. So this is even though it's a demo system, it is a live system. So I think Ben is the right man to receive this information. So let's update that to Ben.
Thank you.
And press save.
And let's send out an email to him.
Okay. So email. I think one of the things that when I'm doing these, if I'm sending out emails, is often you get these bombarded by emails which are all the same for everybody, and actually that's not how I want to speak to people. Yes, there is some commonality, but on the flip side, I do want to put a personal note in there. So how could I approach that in Dynamics?
Great. So in a lot of the things that we do in Dynamics, it's all very personal. It will come from you, Rupert, but what we can do is automate a lot of these tasks that are routine. So if you click on Insert Template on the toolbar, it will allow us to choose from a variety of templates around the system that we have ready. So right, the one at the top, Webinar 2.0, and that will key in all of the key information we need, and you can finalize it and press send. So if we want to do a bunch of these in one go, the speed to do them is a lot faster.
Okay. So yeah, I've got that. Can I just dispatch that away then?
Yep, hit send and it's off, and that will go off to our contact Ben.
Oh, great, yeah.
Okay, so that's gone off to
timeline. Yeah,
brilliant. So now in our timeline, we can see a couple of things that we've already sent out here. We've got the email that we sent that's closed. We can see that we created the record as well, and it's very easy if we want to record all of these conversations. The beauty of this is that if you're having a conversation with that person, it's not trapped in your Outlook or in your diary, wherever it may be. This is stuff that's all shared out. So the next thing we'll do is we'll pick up the phone and have a quick call with Ben to talk about what he felt about the webinar and perhaps what we can do for him as the next service.
I have to say, what I really like about Dynamics is I've got this single pane of glass, so I'm not having to go to different screens to go and find everything. It's all in front of me. Particularly important if you've got an inbound call from a client and you're thinking, where did we get to? There's one place to go. So yeah, let's schedule that phone call. Proposal. And when should we do that? Let's do it by the end of the week. 8 o'clock seems a bit early. Let's go for a more sensible 4:30.
Okay, thank you. So what we've now got in that timeline is an active element there, and that active element allows us to see that we've got a call schedule. Rupert, if you could hover over it, and if you click on that icon to expand it, the one right next to the bin, that will allow a little higher up. That's the one. That will allow us to open the record. So let's imagine we're having the call with Ben. We can now capture all the discussions and descriptions that we had on this call with him.
Okay. He's a keen buyer. He's ready to go. He
Perfect.
wants to get it done before Christmas. Everyone wants to get it done before Christmas, don't they?
It's coming to that point of the year. And now we can mark that as complete. So that will then record it in Dynamics as an activity that we've finished. And this is where, if I refer back to my homepage where I had my tasks, this is where it will show me an active task, and as it's marked as complete, it will record it as done. So if I'm not around and somebody needs to follow up with what I've got to do today, they can pick these up and follow through. Now, I want to talk a little more about the business process flow, the qualify, develop, propose, and close stages we have. We've got a simple 4-stage process, but it's very easy to make that longer or shorter as needed. And indeed, if you could click on qualify, please, Rupert, change what's visible or appears in here. Now, we know Ben works for one of our clients, Alpine Ski House, so we're going to pick that so it doesn't create a duplicate, but we now know when he's going to buy. We have a good idea of his budget, and we know that for this purpose, he's going to be the decision maker, and we've identified him as that person. So what we can now do is, rather than click on next stage, let's qualify this and convert it across into an opportunity. So if you could click on the qualify button, please, on the ribbon at the top. And now what that's doing is it's going to create for us an account, a contact, and an opportunity. Great, so that's going to join up Ben now across to our Alpine Ski House account, so we've not duplicated that through. And what we see here on that left-hand side is our topic. Now, I think we can change that topic name to be a little more responsive for what this particular opportunity is about. We know that it was obviously a webinar that he attended, but now we know what he wants to do. And what's important here is that all the information that we had discussed in the leads section has transferred through. So if you have a marketing team that would go and carry this step out and then transfer it across into the opportunity area and then hand it over to one of your team to complete the sale, everything that they've discussed is available for you right here. So we can see all the details around Ben and his budgets. We've got all the details that we would want in that area. Now we've got the area and we've got the collaboration piece, but the discussions with Ben. But what I really want to do is bring into here the internal collaboration piece, and I'm going to hand over to Ben to talk about Teams and how we join this up.
Thanks, Haseet. Perfect. So yeah, no, it's a really good point. If we think about how we actually go through a process of generating a sale, quite often in something like this, we might want to bring in some additional people and discuss it. Perhaps it's an existing company and you want to collaborate with some other people that work with that account. So what we're going to do is actually jump back to Teams. So if you could fire that tab back up. And Rupert, can you click on the Teams sidebar link, please? What we're going to highlight from here is we've actually pre-created a Microsoft team for our clients. There's different ways that you could do this. We could have teams for each client. We could have a sales team where we have channels for each client, but we've chosen to create a team for each of our clients. And what we're going to do in a second is actually now create a new channel, which we're going to use to collaborate on the opportunity. So Rupert, can you just do that and just go and create a new channel for us to collaborate on that opportunity? While Rupert's doing this, just a very quick overview of what this means. So when we think about Teams, you can think, if you haven't used it extensively in this respect, typically people think about Teams for making calls, running meetings, etc. But what we're looking at is these different sort of collaboration workspaces where you can come together and actually get work done. In this case, as we said, we've got a team for the customer or the client in this case. And we're going to create a channel, which is basically like a threaded subtopic of information. We can see here that we've got the opportunity to create new conversations and have discussions with people around the particular project. We've got a files area that we can actually use to store documents and other things like wikis, etc. And it's just that way of getting stuff done in the context of a particular activity, in this case, a sales opportunity. What we're going to do now, though, is actually link this this channel of discussion and work to that CRM record. So Rupert, could you click on the plus button, please? And we're just going to click on the Dynamics 365 icon. While that is just spinning up, again, there was quite a lot of different options here. These are all the various different applications that can all come into this sort of digital workplace that is Microsoft Teams. And we can see immediately that opportunity that Rupert created is right at the top, Teams plus Dynamics Christmas Go Live. And we have now effectively connected the CRM opportunity to Teams so that we can now start having some discussions around it and start collaborating. Now, having said that, I think before we do anything else, Rupert, I think we need to actually get an NDA issued and signed to that customer, don't we? So what we're going to do from this interface here is click on the Smart Flows drop down. So Smart Flows is a tool that allows you to automate documents based on templates pre-filled with appropriate metadata from the CRM record. That's just fired up and actually generated a non-disclosure agreement, which we're now going to go and put through our eSignature tool. So Rupert, let's just have a quick jump back. Because the non-disclosure agreement is actually related to the account as a whole, regardless of the specific opportunity, that's been saved in the General tab in the Files area for the account as a whole. We can see that that's literally just come through. So, Rupert, do you want to just have a quick look at that non-disclosure agreement? Let's see what's gone into it. So we're not going to do too much with this, but just get an idea of what's been generated. So in this case, we've actually got the company name has been pre-populated, the date has been pre-filled out, the right office details and company address, etc., and of course our own address. And if we have a look a bit further down, we can see we've got this sort of signing block. One is for ourselves, and one is for the customer, and we can see the relevant fields have automatically been populated, but we can also see these sort of funny looking tags, and what we're going to highlight in a minute is that those tags are actually going to be used by our eSignature tool to automatically support the electronic signing process. So Rupert, would you mind just clicking on the Sign Now tab on the left hand side of your screen, please, on the left hand side of Teams? Let's just do that, and we'll just click on the Sign Now top tab there, please. Thank you. So we're going to upload a document to Sign Now, which is the e-signature tool that we're using. You may be familiar with DocuSign, very similar functionality. So Rupert's navigating into the team that we've populated that document, the Alpine Ski House team. Let's just click into the General tab, please, and go and take the NDA that we were just looking at, and we're just going to go and import it. So while that's just thinking, we should see that come through very quickly. We'll give it a second. So that document has been uploaded. And actually, one of the things that's worth highlighting, because we had those electronic sort of tags embedded into the document, that has automatically kicked off an e-signature process. And actually, you can see it's sent one to my own work address. Feel free to contact me on this. And it's also sent one to our fictitious Megan character here. So Rupert, do you want to go and have a look at what's come through in Megan's email while I go and sign my bit of this?
Yeah, and it's probably worth saying, Ben, that we've sort of teared the process down so you can see it. Naturally, you know, if we were to do this at scale, you'd automate a lot of these processes behind the scenes, so you wouldn't actually get to worry about this moving into Sign Now. But this is more to show how the process works.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah.
So I've been invited to sign it. And we can do clever things like signing orders, for example. So you might say, well, I don't want to sign it until, you know, my client has signed it first, for example. So that could also be introduced. So it's our same document here. And I've already set up a signature. And same with the date. We manually select it, but you can enforce the date if you want it to be today's date, and not to give someone an option. Now, as it happened, Ben hasn't signed this yet, because we haven't put a signing order on it, but I'm sure he will shortly.
Yeah, I've done my bit.
Excellent. So I can close that down, and I can delete this email and tidy up as I go. And actually, you can see that yes, it's a record that I've signed it. Okay, Ben.
Fantastic. So I think, just to sort of summarize what we've done there, the final step, of course, would be to actually go and download. We're not going to worry about that right now because we would automate that typically. But the final step would be then to save the actual signed version of that document back into the CRM record. But I think hopefully this gives a sort of clear indication of how we can automatically generate a document with the right information, kick it through a signing and e-signature process based on automatic fields that have been populated. I think the thing now we've got that NDA in place, Rupert, I think it's probably back over to Haseet. So let's think about how we start our statement of work and getting our proposal out the door. Do you reckon?
Yep.
Like a plan, yeah.
Thanks, Ben. Okay, Rupert, let's switch back to our opportunity. So we're in our develop stage of the opportunity. And if we click on our link, we can see all the fields that we have that we need to capture. There's a couple of areas that we want to fill in. First of all, is as our customer need a proposed solution. And so we'll start to put some more detail into here. And as Rupert fills that in, we can now also start to fill in information that we are learning about this client around the stakeholders, who from their side of the business will be involved in this decision and what are their roles, so we can address those. And indeed, if we know who we're competing against, if they've told us that, we can mark that in there as well, so we can then start to capture this rich information about this particular opportunity. Now at this stage, I feel we're ready to move that on to the proposal stage. So could you click on that, please? Great. Now we've got this next stage to complete, but before we do, let's scroll down a little on this opportunity, please, Rupert, and we can finalize what we're going to propose to them as our piece around that. So then we can use this area to generate our statement of work. Now, all the information that you're discussing with the client, whether it's by email, whether it's by phone call or by meetings, can all be tracked in here. So your whole team is available. It's available for your whole team to see as they need it. And now we've got the final elements of those three completed. Why don't we kick off?
I just want to think before we do that. I think we are going to charge expenses. There's going to be some maybe overnight accommodation here. It could get quite expensive. So I don't think that's a cost we want to bear. So the reason I'm saying this is a component part of the statement of work which may or may not be included. So we're showing how we could introduce blocks of text and numbers within those blocks of text based on the rules, business rules that we set, and how we configure Dynamics. So let's just save those changes.
Great, thanks for that.
And we're going to build our statement of work. So let's click the button.
So as this comes out, it's doing a couple of things for us. So we've got our document generator there. We could click on that and open it in Word, but we've also made this save directly to the SharePoint folder. And so in a second, as we transfer across, we'll have that available to us in our Alpine Ski House opportunity channel. So Rupert, shall we flip across to that and we can see how that looks in there for our collaboration piece?
Well, before we do that, should we have a look at the files area in here? Actually, it's a good point.
Yes, of course. Yeah. So great point there, Ben. What we have here, because we've joined up Teams, SharePoint and Dynamics, all the information that we need is available to us essentially in any one of those three areas. So whether you're coming in from Dynamics, whether you're coming in from Teams or straight to SharePoint, that same record is available to you too. That same file is available to you to work with. So we've got that saved in there. Let's flip across to Teams and see the same file in there. We can then do some more collaboration on it.
Perfect. Thanks, Asit. So, right. So Rupert's just going to go and click onto that channel that we just created. And as we saw, perfect, you click on the Files tab. So as we saw in the Dynamics opportunity, we saw the statement of work had been generated. But again, if we go into the team channel, because we've wired that up and we go into the Files area, we can see that document working in Teams. So if you're managing the sales process, you're likely to be in Dynamics. But if you're collaborating on working through that opportunity and getting input and co-authoring, which we're going to demonstrate in a second, you're probably going to be thinking around Teams. But either way, you have that sort of single source of the truth of that document. It's a single document, but visible in multiple places. So Rupert, let's just think of our scenario where you've started this statement of work, but we need a bit of input from one of our colleagues. So should we just go to the Post tab and demonstrate how we can use the Teams functionality to bring someone else into this? So let's just go and start a new conversation, I think. And let's just go and invite our colleague Diego. I think he seems to be the person that's going to help us out today. So what we can see, Rupert has just gone and done an @mention to Diego. He's going to start a message. Diego has been added as part of this team already, which is great. And we're now just going to click on the, we'll give Rupert a chance to finish typing. We click on the Attach menu, press on the Browse Teams and Channels. And we'll see that that document is already in this particular channel, and I can go and share a link to it. So let's just go and press the send button. Diego is going to get notified, so I'm kind of logged in as Diego over on my screen here, so you won't necessarily be able to see that, but that doesn't matter. But what we can see is that that single document, I've called out my colleague, or Megan's called out her colleague. She's attached that document directly into the message without sending it around to anyone. And now Rupert is actually going to click into this document itself. And we're going to demonstrate how you can start to do co-authoring and collaboration. So if we think about a real life scenario, typically it might be one person is thinking about the investment section and fleshing that out and maybe looking at the sort of commercial and legal elements, and then there might be someone else that's looking at some of the more delivery focused elements. So Rupert, let's just have a little scroll down. The first thing, actually, do you want to just talk about the expense section that's just been added in there?
Yeah, so we said that we were going to recharge expenses, so we've now included this paragraph and saying the work shall be charged at cost. Had we said, for example, that expenses, will be borne by us, then we change the statement to say, we will bear the expenses. But this is a small example of how you can use business logic to actually build your contract, rather than maybe an alternative approach would be looking at the last 3 deals that you did and pulling paragraphs from each together and trying to make it all hang together. So there we go. And look, I can see you're in there, Diego, and you're typing away. And by hovering over your icon here, I can see you're actually on page 6, which is here. so I can zoom to bits if I didn't know what you were doing. But
exactly.
So
as Rupert was talking there and sort of describing that, I was just going in and logging in to work on the document, start adding my bits. And as Rupert highlighted, you can see when someone else is editing the document. And actually, I'm just going to go and put a couple of lines in myself. So I'll put in perhaps training materials. And you can see as I'm typing away, you can see that that's coming through on the screen. Perhaps that solution deployed to your environment. And if we think about what we're replacing, if you're familiar with co-authoring, then this won't necessarily be new to you. But you know, how many times as part of getting a document or a proposal signed off or generated, have you had to email that document to your colleague? They'll go and open track changes. They'll email it back to you. You've then got to try and compile all of those differences and updates into this single document, which you then get issued. You then find that someone had the wrong version of the document. What we're doing is with a single document that's visible via Dynamics and visible via Teams, we're able to make those changes in line with multiple people focusing on their various different bits. Now, sometimes we don't want to just do this in Teams. We might want to use the full Word client, or actually, Rupert, do you want to fire open the Word Online version and demonstrate some of the commenting functionality?
Yeah, so some people find the noise of Teams around the outside doesn't maybe add as much value, and a cleaner interface is certainly the browser-based one, and we've got a bit more functionality here. And for example, we should let's say we want to raise a question about this accommodation. I mentioned the hotel earlier, so let's add a comment in and ask Diego to help us with that. So by mentioning his name, he's going to get an email because I'm referencing this. Do you know the hotel costs? And we're going to ping that over to him, and he'll, if he wasn't in the document, he'd get an email to say you've been referencing this document. So you don't need to send that separate email saying, please, can you update the document in that, you're creating comments, and then Diego can go in and review the comments and mark them as done once he's gone through those. So there you go. He's gone straight in. But furthermore, we can also go to the full desktop app as well. So a lot of people, if you're doing maybe creating a very rich graphic-based document, then full fat Word is the way to go. And also it might just be the interface that you're familiar with. So yet again, document pops up straight from the bat, and we're in there. So
it's just worth that. This is still, although we've got this open in 3 different interfaces, this is still the real single version of the truth as I'm typing away. So we're still editing, despite the fact we've got 3 different clients, full fat, etc., web version and Teams. We're all editing exactly the same version. So it really partly comes down to personal preference of what you feel most comfortable, which tool you feel most comfortable using, doesn't it, Rupert? I would say. Yeah,
I think the other thing, little feature which Microsoft recently introduced is that often people, when they create a document, they don't think about the name properly, and actually now you can edit the name of a file at any point, even if people put it open in different environments. So we changed that, and now that will reflect for everybody. So one of my pet hates was people not following document naming standards. I can solve that even if they're editing the document themselves.
Fantastic. So let's have a think about this. So we've gone through, we've generated the templated document with the right values. It's got the expenses information. We've used the power of Teams to actually start collaborating on this document and get additional input. And we've managed to sort of significantly save the time it takes to do that. Now, having said that, though, typically, Rupert, off the end of a proposal like this, we probably want to send this through some form of sort of at least sign-off process, don't we? So that the right person has had that sort of final review and can say if they've approved it or not. So shall we sort of just quickly demonstrate that? And what we're going to do now, Rupert's opening up the files area, but we're going to just fire up the SharePoint itself, which is where these files are being stored, to demonstrate some richer additional functionality around this. So. Yeah.
You make a good point, Ben, that what Teams is doing here is giving you a cut down version of SharePoint, so removing maybe what some people see some of the clutter. We might say the richer features. But we can break out into SharePoint. We're accessing the same files, the same information, but we've got a lot more options of how we can manage our documents from here.
Yeah, exactly. So what we're going to do now is just kick off a sign-off process. So Rupert, do you want to just click on the ellipses, click on automate, and we're just going to start a sign-off process, a request sign-off. We reckon Nesta is probably, our colleague Nesta is probably the person to go and do that final authorization. Now, in reality, you know, you wouldn't normally, in a proper business process, you wouldn't normally want to go and pick the person to approve. This would be baked into your business rules based on things like, you know, if it's above a certain amount or based on your manager. But for the purpose of this demo, we've just started that sign-off process. And now, Rupert, do you want to jump over to your sort of Nesta's email so we can demonstrate what comes through for him?
Oh, yeah, and it's by magic, it's come through.
That's actually come through really quickly, which is fantastic. So what we can see here, there's a link to the document itself embedded in the email. But the thing that's really interesting about this is that the options to approve or reject this are actually embedded straight into the email itself. You don't have to take someone out of what they're doing, you know, which is either, you know, email or Teams. You don't have to take them away from what they're doing. They can go and review the document and then just come back and quickly approve it. They don't have to go and sign into some separate system to do it. It's all handled for them. What we're looking at here is this concept is called an active card. It's where the email has actually got functionality in it that will change based on what you do. So if you go and click on the approve button, please, Rupert, and let's just go and fill in some details. It's worth highlighting, this isn't just visible in the web client. You don't have to use the web client to do this. This will work in the full Outlook client, provided you've got the Office 365 version deployed. And it also works in the Outlook app on your mobile phone, which is really powerful. So it's, you know, it's full-blown functionality for everyone to use. And we can see that as Rupert has done that, if he goes back to that email, it's been updated, so he's not going to be accidentally, you know, redoing the same email or figuring out which one he's done. He's gone into this. He can see that he's already approved this, or Nesta, in fact, has already approved this. So, Rupert, shall we just jump back to SharePoint and take a quick look and see what's happened?
Yeah, and I think one thing that we've certainly seen with another customer is that they had more than two options. So they had approve, reject, and they had review. So we can customize the process and also the buttons which appear in this approval email, depending on the business processes, because it might not be simple as a yes or a no.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, wow, look, we've been approved.
So that just happened straight away. So we can see the sign-off status is now approved. That's happened automatically as a result of Nesta going and sort of filling in his status and updating his feedback. So that's perfect. So the SOW has been approved. It's ready to go. So the next step would be, typically we would jump back into Teams, and then we would kick off the electronic signature process. Now, I don't think we necessarily need to do that. We've already shown you the electronic signature process, you know, with the NDA, so we don't necessarily need to repeat that. But let's think about what happens. Let's say that document has gone through the electronic signature process and it's come back. It's been saved into the opportunity. We're just going to sort of simulate that. You know, to minimize having to go through that full sign-off process again, we're just going to copy a sort of pre-signed document, kind of like watching Blue Peter, if you remember that from your childhood. So I'm going to go into and just sort of copy that document in, just to sort of highlight what happens when the signed version of the document comes back. So Rupert, do you want to, that's perfect. So that's come through. So that's just sort of simulating that process that would happen, where it goes through signature, someone signs it, the document is going to get saved back into the opportunity. That's all visible in CRM, in Dynamics, I should say. But one final thing we just need to think about is that this signed version of the document it's a legal contract. You know, you've signed something, you've committed to do some work, you have a legal contract in place with your client now, and with that comes with some compliance or legal obligations around how these documents should be stored. You know, if there was ever any kind of issue during the delivery of this engagement, and you needed to bring in the solicitors, or you needed to refer back to a particular clause, you need to be absolutely confident that A, the document hasn't been modified, but also you're keeping it for those, you know, regulatory requirements. It's quite often to hear, it's quite common to hear about documents being kept for things like 7 years. We must retain documents for 7 years. After that, they can be reviewed or disposed of, if, you know, and ideally that's done automatically. You hear a lot about that with things like GDPR requirements as well. So if there's documents that have certain types of data, you want to automatically dispose of it after a certain period of time. Now, typically though, unfortunately, most clients will sort of rely on, shall we say, good luck and goodwill or backups to ensure that those documents are kept for those periods of time. But with the power of SharePoint, we can actually mark these documents as a record and ensure that those compliance details are being kept. So what you can see, Rupert selected those 2 documents, and you're just going to click on apply retention label. We've got this commercial record defined. So we've defined this commercial record concept, and we've decided that we need to keep it for 7 years, and that after that it's going to be automatically disposed, for instance. So Rupert, do you want to just click on that and select the commercial records? Let's just do that and press save.
Yeah, I think it's just worth saying that you don't have to dispose of it after 7 years, but for example, example at the other end is you might take CVs in and you might want to make sure that you don't hold those for more than 6 months. So you could put what we call a disposition policy, and when a document, or maybe it's any document within a certain SharePoint folder arrives in there, you know it's going to be deleted after 6 months, so you're not worried about the impact of holding personal data beyond the period of time that is necessary to hold it for.
Perfect. So Rupert, if you just close down the information pane there for a second, please, and can you just unselect? So you can see now that those 2 documents have got a little padlock symbol hovered over them. So one sort of significant thing about this, the record has been applied, they are now locked, they cannot be modified, and they will be kept for those 7 years. They can't be deleted unless you're an administrator, you know, with high level privileges, which is auditable. And what Rupert's actually done is highlight that not just the signed copy, but we want the original document that generated that copy, because that is also a record. And when Rupert clicked into this, you can see that the editing option has actually been disabled. We can't do any further modifications on this document now. That is physically locked record that you can attach. And Rupert, I'm just thinking, should we just sort of bring this home and go back into the opportunity record and go back into the files tab? And maybe we might just need to refresh our screen there. Perhaps I'll click the refresh button. Sorry, put you on the spot. Up and right. Up a bit further. Refresh. That's it. Sorry. Oh, my bad. There we go. Do that again.
There we go.
So that's it. So we can see that those documents are in there. So again, it's single source of the truth. Documents are in the right place. They're linked to the record, which they should be. They're linked to the CRM record as they should be, but they're actually locked, so they can't be modified. So you're meeting your compliance requirements as well. So I think over to you chaps to sort of bring that home and summarize.
Great, thanks. So before we do summarize that, Rupert, shall we go and close and win our opportunity through?
Yeah, great idea.
So we've got our proposal stage. We can mark that as 1. So we know the value of the opportunity and we know the close date. If we wanted to record anything else, like who we beat, the descriptions, we can do all of these areas. So this can then be used in the future for any win-loss reporting, which competition we're working against and where they come up. And that's now recorded as a win for Megan for her opportunities for this month.
Excellent. I see.
Great. Right. Thanks, Rupert. And I think that ends that process.
Yeah, I think the next thing I was saying, right, let's look at my next opportunity. By looking at expanding this chart out, I can see I've got this whole bundle in qualify and another 15 million in propose. So by clicking on these, I could identify, right, which account is the next account I'm going to work on, and a bit of charts here. We can see, well, actually the big opportunity seems to be with AdventureWorks. So maybe that's somewhere I want to go. But also there's often this disconnect between reporting and the underlying data. And often people don't believe the numbers they see. We're thinking, well, how did anyone create that? And what I really like about Dynamics is that it all actually comes together here. So on one side, we've got the chart, but on the other side, we've got the underlying data which supports that chart. And by clicking on an individual bar, you can see, right, this is how we got to 6 million. We've got 4 million of the global DMS rollout and 2 million here, and the home PC project. Well, that hasn't got anything against it yet. So I think I thought I'd add that because, you know, as someone in my role, I find that really useful to see how does it all to come together. So we've looked at that. What I'm going to do now is just review what you've seen today. So we've shown it all, just do a quick review, open the floor for Q&A. I would say that Microsoft Teams does have a slight delay, so do put your questions in now, and we'll shout them out to us, and we'll see what we could best do to answer those. So what have we seen? And, you know, we've really smashed through this process in about 40 or so minutes. So we ran our fictitious webinar and we got a whole bundle of leads. We then, stage 2 was we took that lead and we qualified one and converted it to an opportunity. With opportunity, we felt actually now was the time to put an NDA in place. So we issued that NDA and we did electronic signature for it. We then created a bespoke proposal based on some of the configuration options that we put into our opportunities. So we talked about, you know, our example was expenses, but yours might be around maybe a support option or a service offering or an additional service offering. To help build out your proposals. And then we brought in some experts to collaborate on it. So we brought in Diego and Nesta to collaborate it, and then also to approve it. So you saw the approval process and how you know, potentially how that could be customized. Then we would have issued it for signing, and that could have been the final stage of the approval process. So we could automate that. So if someone says once it's approved, bang, it goes out the door for signing. You don't even need to do that, and we can accelerate these processes. We've also can do workflows based on maybe certain attributes. So maybe you need pieces of work which are over $1 million hypothetically, because you might not want to review everything. The final piece is that came back into SharePoint as a signed contract, and what we wanted to do is mark it as a record. And we've often heard of organisations where there's not confidence that the piece of paper they're looking at is the actual contract or the final version of the truth. And by using records, that's a great way to do that and help make work more efficient. And finally, yeah, we won the opportunity, so let's mark it as such, and we did that in Dynamics. And then we considered now, you know, where's the next qualified lead coming from? So we went back to the beginning of the process. So just before we go into Q&A, I think there's 5 takeaways, and you know, we highlighted that was part of the offer of this webinar. One is, you know, how can I use that single client data entry? What you don't want to be doing is sending over an NDA saying, please complete your details here, because you have that information. So why not reuse it and make sure that you have a single version of the truth which is accurate? So we created documents based on the information that we already knew, avoiding introducing errors, for example. Then, you know, we talked about options. So I talked about canned solutions. So what are the optional blocks of content or business rules you might want to put in creating documents if you were creating custom solutions? We then, once we built that, and the third takeaway is think how you collaborate. Collaborate, you know, through Teams, not via email. Now is not the time, you know, to be sending an email attachments backwards and forwards. Start working together and have that single version of the truth. We looked at eSignatures. I think number 4 for us is how can eSignatures, you know, accelerate sales? Even now you're dealing with organizations and maybe you're one of these, you know, please complete this document, please print it, please sign it, please scan it, and please send it back to us. Well, you know, with home working, people might not have all those facilities available to them. So consider how eSignatures might be able to solve some of those problems. And then the final point is, you know, how do you identify your single version of a truth? If someone else is coming into your account, how do they know that's the contract, that's the Word document, which is the final version? And we talked about records management of a way of doing that. So hopefully those 5 key points come together, and that's what we've found today is turn it into a story which, you know, hopefully people can understand and resonate with.